Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Credit Chat Live. I'm Rod Griffin, Senior Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. And I'm here to answer your questions about credit reporting, credit scoring, fraud and ID theft, all the things I talk about every Tuesday and Thursday, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern. Pat and J33, thanks for joining me, being part of the chat. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We're in a very unusual time, as we all know right now. Things are changing rapidly. We want to make sure that we give you the information you need to manage that credit history, take care of your credit scores, make sure we get through this together as intact as we possibly can. So really challenging time. Retta Timmons, thanks for being here and being part of the chat. King of Prophet Z, thanks for being here. And please do feel free to ask. There's a lot going on. There was an announcement yesterday that the 3 national credit reporting companies are making credit reports available free once a week for the next year through annualcreditreport.com. So if you haven't gotten your report, please do. And know that's available so that you can track. We also have free services through our CreditWorks tool and others. So at Experian.com, you can learn more. So we're making that information, all of your credit report information, available to you so that you can stay on top of it and make sure that it's there to work for you. There are things to think about and realize, am I a professor? Nafasul 300, I'm not a professor. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian, and I've been with Experian 23 years. So I picked up a few things along the way about credit reporting and credit scoring. Jorge Luis PP90, how can I fix inquiries that don't get recognized? And Ms. 84, thanks for joining. Always great to see you. How can I fix inquiries so you don't get recognized? If you have existing accounts and your credit report is being accessed by existing lenders, those are soft inquiries. Only you would ever see those. Inquiries that we think of as hard inquiries are the result of your application for credit. So if you apply for credit, we by law have to post an inquiry. And so that's going to be on your credit report for 2 years. It would show that you've applied for credit. Your credit history, if you have an existing credit history, is going to be tied to your identity if you use credit. It's going to be there so that we can accurately identify who you are, so that we can match your credit history to you. You can't change information to try to escape a poor credit history, those sorts of things. The law prohibits that. In terms of changing inquiries or that sort of thing, can't really fix inquiries. If someone's looked at your report, they're going to show that inquiry. It's a federal requirement of the Fair Credit Reporting Act that we show an inquiry, or simply an inquiry simply is a record that someone's looked at your credit reports. We have to show those for your information, and if you've applied for credit, the inquiries are shown to other lenders as well. So can't really. There's nothing to fix, I guess, is a way to put that when it comes to inquiries. Angela 412-47596, thanks for being in part of the chat. Steve Glenn Rogers, thanks for being here and joining. If you have questions, please do ask. If you're just joining, I'm Senior Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. Experian, one of what's often referred to as big 3 credit reporting companies in the U.S., and I'm here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern, to answer your questions about credit reports and credit scores, and especially in a time like this, how we can possibly help you get the information you need and the resources to take care of your personal finances, to work with lenders, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect your credit history as you come through this. Steve Glenn Rogers, do I recommend freezing your credit? Well, for those who don't know, a credit freeze is when you go to Experian or the other 2 national companies, TransUnion or Equifax, and you have us give you a PIN number and freeze your credit file, meaning no one can access the report unless you first lift that freeze by providing that PIN number. That can help in the event of someone who has stolen your identity trying to use it to commit credit fraud. So I think that's the first thing to understand. Can it be a good tool? Yes, depending on your situation, but I talk to a lot of people, and it's not for everyone. Here's the way I look at it. With a credit freeze, first you have to understand what it does and does not do. So a credit freeze will not prevent identity theft. It doesn't prevent someone from stealing your identity. So it doesn't prevent someone from hacking a database. It doesn't prevent someone from stealing a computer. It doesn't prevent someone from taking the mail out of your mailbox. It doesn't prevent someone from going through your trash and getting your identity and then attempting to use that identity for other fraudulent purposes. It won't stop identity theft. So I always caution people, and the reason I stress that is because that's what I often hear, and from some advocates who really should know better will say that to prevent identity theft, freeze your credit file. It doesn't do that. What it does do potentially is help prevent the use of a stolen identity to commit credit fraud. So it's a really pretty narrow protection, really important to understand, and understand when it's triggered. So it only is triggered, a freeze, if someone applies for credit or other services that cause your credit report to be accessed. So it can be a good tool. If you're a victim of ongoing identity theft issues and use of your credit report, absolutely might be the right thing for you to do. If you are older or have talked to people with older parents who are not active in the credit marketplace, who for them don't need to have access to their credit report, so it can make sense to freeze the report, either them to do it or for you. I talk to people who are just hypersensitive and really concerned, and so are able to track and not lose that PIN number. That's the thing that trips most people up. Who aren't terribly active in needing credit, might make sense as an additional protection. If you're someone, though, who is active in the credit marketplace and needs to have access to your credit report frequently, it may not be an ideal tool for you, because it doesn't prevent identity theft, and you can find it to be a barrier at times if you have to constantly freeze and unfreeze. Doesn't cost anything to freeze your report. Doesn't cost anything to lift the freeze. It's free. You just have to make sure you go in advance, provide the PIN number, and then we'll lift that freeze. And you can tell us for how long. You can lift it permanently or until you tell us to put it back. So in that sense, it might work for you. If you're like other people and you lose the PIN number, or you're active and you need to be applying for credit or other services, and that having that that freeze can just kind of trip things up. If you're applying for a mortgage, for example, and you have a freeze in place, where you lift the freeze, but then you don't give it long enough, you specify a time frame and it closes. I've talked to people who've had their mortgages get stuck. Things like that to think about. But in that sense, if you know what it does and what the exceptions are, another thing to understand is that with a freeze in place, your existing lenders can still check your credit report as part of their portfolio reviews. Law enforcement obviously can still check your credit report. If you're applying for a lease, they can still check your credit report. If you are applying for a job, you give written permission, they can still check your credit report. So a lot of exceptions as well to be aware of. So it's not a save all end all. I kind of maybe have belabored that point, but I think it's critical to understand what it does and doesn't do, and what you need to do to not lose that PIN number. But otherwise, it might be a good tool. There are other things that are available that are helpful. So things like adding, if you're a victim of identity theft, a initial security alert or a 7-year victim statement. They're free. The lenders have to respond to them anytime they get your report. So if you were make sure that you're protected at the point of application. So the other tools as well. So from a recommending, depends on your situation and kind of your personality to some extent. There we go. I'm losing things. Make sure I come back and get your question. So, Nafasul 300, I've kind of explained, I'm Senior Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian in the U.S., in North America. We are one of the nation's largest credit reporting companies. And so people here are, if you're applying for credit, applying for apartment lease, if you're applying for a job, potentially, they may check your credit report. So it's really important to know what's in that credit history. So I want to help people understand how to do that. That's what this is really all about. Is the credit bureau processing information or reports at this COVID time like normal? Yes. So we continue to work essentially normally. There are steps we're putting in place, things like the ability for lenders to add special codes for people who are affected by COVID-19 to place an account in forbearance or deferment, or to add a natural disaster, declared disaster statement. We're also, again, providing free reports now weekly through annualcreditreport.com. And we are doing some other things in terms of service to make sure that we're continuing otherwise to operate as normal, to make sure that your credit history is protected, but at the same time, continuing to help the economy as it is at the moment, to continue to move forward and continue to be able to provide financial services and tools and resources. We want to make sure we're doing both. So huge challenge. Can you provide a description of Boost? And now I'm having an attack of puberty. My voice is cracking. That's odd. Yes. So Experian Boost is a free service that allows you to have Experian add your positive, and that's the key word, your positive or on-time cell phone payments or utility payments to your credit report as accounts. So if you go to Experian.com/boost, and give us permission to access your account that you pay those payments through each month, we'll capture that payment every month, put it in your account, in your credit report as an account, so that you get positive payment information. Cell phone companies, utility service providers in the past didn't report positive information, still don't traditionally themselves. If you are unable to pay, they might report a collection account or late payments, but you didn't get, and this is a terrible pun, but you didn't get credit for the paying on time. And our research has shown that people who are paying those cell phone bills on time, paying those utility bills on time, are demonstrating that they are a good credit risk. But for people who have short credit histories, what we call thin credit files, fewer than 5 accounts, or credit scores below 680, so they're building their credit history, having those on-time payments show that you are a good credit risk. You just haven't had the opportunity to have that positive payment history added in terms of traditional accounts. So we go back up to 24 months. So if you tell us, I want to have my cell phone bill included in payments included in my credit report, give us the bank account information so we can capture that payment each month. We'll go back up to 2 years, add that information so you get 2 years of history right away in your credit report, and that will help then build that credit history and add that positive information. And as a result, what we're seeing is people who go through Experian Boost and enroll are seeing on average about a 13-point increase for 2 out of 3 people. People with thin credit files are seeing about a 19-point increase. So it's proving to be really helpful. Again, it's free, it's permission-based. So if you decide you don't want to, you can tell us to stop. It's all under your control. So that's how Boost works, and we're seeing really great results. It's been out about a year now. Could I work as a creditor intern? Little buddy, that I wish we had interns opportunities. Don't right now. And at a bank or a credit union, ask. They might. It can be really helpful. So important to know. Don't discuss my salary information. I can tell you I'm not getting rich, but I'm doing okay. I'm very happy with the company I work for. Very proud to work for Experian. They've done well by me. So, but I live in a normal tract home, drive a Hyundai and a Honda. So if that gives you some sense. It gets. Am I getting stuck? I don't know if it's the feed. I hope not. As I scroll down, make sure that we're sharing information so that I get to the right questions or to the questions. How will reporting agencies view the various customer requests to creditors to skip payments? Ivy Preston 1. So if you're working with your lenders, the 2 most common things right now are forbearance and deferment. So if they put your account in forbearance or deferment, essentially what will happen is from the start of that forbearance period, there won't be any negative information reported. So if your account is current as at the time the forbearance is put in place or the deferment's put in place, it will continue to be reported as current until the end of that forbearance period. If your account is, say, 30 days late at the time the forbearance starts, throughout that forbearance period, it will continue to be reported 30 days late. So it's not going to become more delinquent, and it won't become delinquent if it's current. So that's the way that's going to work. So essentially, it freezes where you are at the start of the forbearance or deferment, and then we'll pick up again when we get through this and the forbearance period ends. So That's how we would handle that. If you're working with lenders and they are saying you don't have to make a payment, they won't report a payment. So they would either report the account as paid on time or as no pay, not applicable. You might see NA, meaning no payment was reported, positive or negative for that period. So you wouldn't see any negative impact as a result. So, if they say you can skip a payment this month or for 2 months, they would report that the account's still current, or that there was just simply nothing reported, so nothing negative or positive added is what you would typically see. Warm Blanket 69, thanks for joining. C2M24, thanks for sharing. Always great. Your job seems to be less stressful than mine. I'm an architect. I don't know. I love what I do. I tell people I have the best job in our company because I get to share information with people and help people with their financial lives and be more successful and understand something that's really complicated and confusing sometimes, and we don't want it to be. So I love what I do. I wouldn't say that I'm not stressed sometimes. I mean, I have gray hair for a reason. Some of it's genetic. I'm like looking at my dad when I was 30 years ago. So the way he looked now, I suppose, but some of it's, there's certainly stress. There's always, things that are happening. People need to know what we do. And if we can help them better understand what we do, that's what I'm here to do. So from that perspective, I love what I do and have one of the most rewarding jobs in the company. So I think if your job's rewarding, the stress is worthwhile. And there is some stress that I hope I'm not showing too much. Is it true that Experian Boost does not calculate into mortgage algorithms? C2M24, that is correct at this point. So there are some scores where the data just doesn't feed into, or isn't fed into that algorithm. Mortgage lending is kind of the example. Most scores today, the newer ones from Vantage Score and FICO, like FICO 8, for example, which is the most commonly used score, FICO 9, Vantage Score 3.0, 4.0, all incorporate Boost data. So there are some exceptions. That's one of them. So they use an older model. We don't feed the data into that at this point. I was asked that question by a reporter the other day, if I thought that it would change, and I think it will at some point. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, actually, have come out. I think it was Freddie Mac came out, but I think both are saying that they will begin to accept other scores for mortgage lending purposes, and that, I think, will bring about that change, that newer scores will be incorporated. I think that will be good for everybody because newer systems are more predictive, and what that really means is more people will be able to qualify because they're using older scoring systems that aren't able to identify people who may not have traditional credit histories, who aren't don't meet that really kind of traditional perspective, but should still be good credit risk. So I think as you see that competition change and more scores used, I think it's going to be positive, and we will see that happen. For Boost, once added, can any particular account be removed? Yes, and if I'm recalling properly, you can tell us which accounts you want added, which ones you do not. In fact, in the enrollment process, if you tell us, for example, you want to add your cell phone company, you tell us who that is, we'll search the account you tell us to access and to search for that payment information. If at that time, when we're going through trying to find it the first time, and we find other accounts that may qualify, we'll notify you and tell you, hey, here are several others that as we were searching initially, we found. Do you want to add them? And if you don't, we won't check them anymore. But if you say, yeah, I want it there, my water bill's there, my gas bill's there, my electric bill's there, add those two, we will, or you can say, no, don't, and we won't. So we try to help with that process as well. What are the cons of Boost? Nick Rose 103, very few, because it's only positive information. It's your permission base, so you control it. And so, there's very little downside. If the payments are negative, it's not going to show in the credit report. In fact, if there's I think it's 3 consecutive months of negative payment information or no payment information reported, would really not be negative. We just wouldn't see those payments. We'll take the account off. So we're not going to show negative information. So very little downside in that respect. There are, my eye is itchy. So something There are a handful of people that may have a negative impact when they add that information, just because of the nature of their credit history and the uniqueness of everybody. So there are, as I said, 2 out of 3 people see an increase. That one person out of 3 might see no impact, or they might see a small a decrease. So at that point, you could say, don't want to do this, or you could say, we'll continue, because as the history builds, you might begin to see an increase. So there's that potential downside. But by the same token, if you're not comfortable or choose not to, you can tell us to stop, and we won't add that information anymore. So right now, very, very little impact. So a negative from a downside perspective. It's mostly upside for people. Nick Rosary, 103, thanks for joining. Our forbearance and deferment, 2 different things when it comes to disputing. In terms of what they are, they differ a little bit. In terms of disputing, no, you would dispute the same way. You would say, and you would need to go to your lender let me back up. So if you're working with your lenders and are affected by COVID-19, so maybe had job loss or income reduction, that sort of thing, and you're talking to the lender, they will need to report the account as in forbearance with the special reporting code that says this forbearance related to a natural disaster or declared disaster. And that would automatically appear in your credit report when they next updated it. Another thing I point out is you need to allow a bit of time. So if you talk to your lender today and they say, we're going to start doing this, don't check your credit report this afternoon or tomorrow morning. Give it a bit of time. They usually, they enact it in their system, so it's automatic. It will be in place. You may not see it reported until the end of the billing cycle, so you may not see that update right away, even though it's there. So don't panic if you get your report and don't see it right away. Give it a bit of time, because it's in place with the lender. It just hasn't been updated in our system, because they'll update that with us. So your payment wouldn't be affected. They still wouldn't report negative information, that sort of thing. So be aware of that. But in terms of if you see something you need to dispute, go through the dispute process. Really easy to do. Go to Experian.com/dispute, get your credit report. If you already have it, you can input the report number. If you don't, it will give you a free report right there on the spot, and it will come up on the screen, and you just hit the dispute button next to the account you need to dispute. Follow those instructions. So really pretty simple to do. Do I do photo ops? Little buddy, I don't know why anybody wanted a picture with me in the first place, but but not really. No. But if we meet and we want a selfie and we meet up somewhere in the future, happy to have a picture. Pat and J33, how can I get my score into the 700s with many charge-offs and collection accounts? Going to be really difficult to do. Payment history is by far the most important factor in credit scores. If you have late payments, charge-offs, or collections, that's kind of the most severe of the late payment history until you get to things like bankruptcy. So it will take time. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just a matter of time. If you can catch up on those late payments, that's going to help. If you can pay off those collection accounts, a paid collection in the new scores from FICO and Vantage Score. So the FICO 8 and FICO 9, for example, again, and Vantage Score 3 and 4, which are the most common scores. A paid collection will no longer be included in the score, so you could see that improve right away if it's possible to pay them off. Otherwise, continue to make those payments. In time, they will be deleted from the credit report. Collection accounts are deleted 7 years from the original delinquency date, or the date the original account first became late. So the charged off account, when that charged off account first became late, was never caught up again, never brought current, that's the date that the 7 years is measured from. Collection accounts have to report that. They cannot change that date. That's a matter of federal law. It was part of what we call the Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act, the FACT Act, that amended the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and that also the FACT Act provided for the free annual credit report. So it's been a decade and a half, a long time ago. So they have to report that account, that original delinquency date. From there, if you have an account that is open or active and you can keep it like a credit card, and you keep the balance at zero, make a small purchase, pay it in full each month, you'll have that positive payment history building behind it. And so as the negative information falls off, that positive information will help build, and it will begin to help you improve those scores. You might also check out Experian Boost, which I talked about. That could be helpful as well, particularly if you're working on improving your credit. You've had some issues in the past. That's where we see it being the most valuable. If you lose your credit freeze PIN, what do you do? Well, don't apply for credit right away, because you're going to have to get a new PIN. So you can go to Experian.com/freeze. And there's a link there and information about how to request a new PIN, and we'll help you get one. We may be able to provide a reminder, and you can just follow that process and get your PIN, or we may need to issue a new one, and we'd walk you through that process. But you can get a new PIN. It usually is pretty fast, not going to take days and days usually. If we have to have documentation sent to us to verify your identity, because we want to make sure we're giving a PIN to you, not an identity thief. So, there are things like that could happen to make sure we're working with you to protect you. So that might take a bit longer as well. So, but we can issue and would issue a new PIN, or remind you so that you could remember your PIN if you added one. One other thing I would mention that I came across, and it was kind of surprised me. If you and a spouse or a partner are adding a freeze to your credit reports, and you share the same address and those sorts of things, choose different PINs because that can potentially cause some confusion. If you're both have very similar identifying information and share accounts, especially if you have joint accounts, that sort of thing, and you have exactly the same PIN numbers, that could cause us to say, wait a minute, we're not sure we're working with the right person. There's identity verification issues. So make sure you choose different PINs. I actually talked to a couple, and we spent a couple of days trying to figure out why we were having issues with the PIN. We finally found out they had added their freezes at different times, but they both chose exactly the same PIN number and didn't tell each other. So choose a different PIN number. That if you have a partner, and especially if you have joint accounts. So be sure you talk to each other about that, which was it was unusual. The only time I've ever heard that, but it happened once that I'm aware of. And so when one or the other asked for their report, we went, wait, we can't lift the freeze. We're going to have to verify your identity, and then we need documentation, and because we're trying to protect them because things weren't quite matching. So it caused some confusion. So it was kind of interesting. Andre and Ingracoso kind of looking trollish. Hope not. But I always say, if people are here, you can say what you will about me. People will do things to be rude. Bothers me if they say things about others who can't defend themselves or can't respond. They can say what they want about me. My position is, sticks and stones may break my bones, words will never hurt me. I'm an old guy. But if they're here and they're listening, they might accidentally learn something anyway, because all of you are asking questions that are important and we're sharing information. So if accidental learning is sometimes as good as purposeful learning, as far as I'm concerned. So if we can share information, people learn something, fantastic. How can I raise your score? So a little bit at a time. Time is the most important factor in scores. Get your credit report. You can get it free, a number of different places. When you get that report, get a score. So if you go to Experian and enroll in Boost, for example, you would get a free score in the factors. If you go to our app online, we'll give you a free score and your report. So different places to get scores. And with Experian, we have FICO 8 score. And with it, you will get what we call the risk factors. Those risk factors, there's usually 4, sometimes 5, that will describe what from your credit report most affected that number. Use those risk factors to identify the elements of your report that you need to work on to make your scores better. It's as simple as that. It will tell you exactly what's in your report that's affecting those scores, and they are listed in order of the most important. So the thing that's having the most negative effect will be the first thing listed. The last thing shown will be the least important in terms of the effect on your score. So start with the top one. It could say the presence of late payments. It could say that your credit history is too short. That means time, and Experian Boost might help. It could be that you have too high balances on your credit cards or revolving accounts, same thing. So you need to pay them down, but that will give you the information you need to act on, and that's what we really want to do. DM me. I work for a credit repair company. I can do a free consultation. I will say this, there are fantastic credit counseling firms out there, and that can help know as a consumer, know your rights as a consumer under the Credit Repair Organizations Act. And it's several things you should know. If a credit repair firm asks for money up front, they're violating federal law. They have to provide a written contract. They have to fulfill all of the terms of that written contract before they take a penny from you, and they have to tell you that they can't remove accurate information from your credit report. So they can't promise to remove or say, I'll remove accurate information from your credit report. It's illegal. So know your rights under the law. Know that you can dispute information at Experian for free. There's no cost to do that. And so be aware of that. Not saying anybody's bad, but just as a consumer, especially in a day and age like this, know your rights under the law so that you don't make a bad decision. There are some bad actors out there, actually a lot of bad actors out there, and we don't want any of them to take advantage of you. So, and I've seen credit repair firms that aren't legitimate, who have charged as much as $1,000 an account to dispute it, and that's all they've done. So be aware of your rights and make sure you if you're talking to someone, that you know what your rights are, and know that they have to give you 3 days to withdraw from a contract. So make sure your rights are protected. Are home loans available with extra cash for fixing up the house? Potentially. I saw some news about mortgages and probably second mortgages becoming a bit more difficult now with what we're going through, but they are available. Lenders still want to make loans. And so if you're in a position to do that, talk to your mortgage lender, talk to your bank or credit union. They could probably, not just probably, they can tell you better than I what's available to help. I know Mike Hawk, not off the top of my head, but not saying I don't. Are you seeing the 2008 market crash or worse? I'm not in a position yet to speak to that. Things are so different right now, and so not yet. I mean, and I think it's going to be time for it to change. With COVID-19, is Experian still able to work on credit reports? Yes. Well, we're continuing to do exactly what we did before. In fact, we're making reports more available. We're making sure that we're continuing to comply with federal law and regulations, everything we can to work with you and to work with lenders to make sure that our services are still available. It's a bit different. We're like so many others. Most of us are working remotely now, which is, a change certainly for us. But continuing to do our jobs. And so that's what's really important. How can I get back into my Experian account if I don't have access to the same email and forgot my login? That's a challenge. If you can get close, I mean, I don't know how to tell you. If you have a different email, use the old email, ask for a new password. They're probably going to send you that to that email address though too. So you may need to write or initiate a new account and then talk to our representatives when you get that new account to close the old one. May be the option too. A couple of possibilities. No, I don't think I'm Dave Ramsey. Haven't met Dave personally. Don't agree with his positions around credit. He gives some great advice around savings and other kinds of personal finance issues, but disagree with his perspectives on credit. There are 3 national credit reporting companies. That is true. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. I work for Experian. If you're just joining, I'm Rod Griffin. I'm Senior Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. This is Credit Chat Live. I try to be here Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern on Periscope to answer your questions about credit reporting and credit scoring, fraud and identity theft, all the things we're going through now that are so important to understand and get answers to around your credit history, and make sure it's a tool to use in your financial life so it's there to work for you. We're here as well on Twitter. We're on social media, I should say, not here on Periscope, but on Twitter on Wednesdays, 2 o'clock Central, 3 Eastern, and on Fridays on Facebook Live, and on crowdcast.io. So join us there, 11:30 Central. You can learn more about our social media programs and our live events every week at ex.pn/creditchat and at ex.pn/creditchatlive. Hope to see you all there. Thank you so much for being here, and hope you have a great day. If you are with us, join us tomorrow, 2 o'clock Central, 3 Eastern. If you're able to get on Twitter, I'll see you again Thursday, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern here on Periscope. Take care, everybody, and I'll talk to you all again very soon.